Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Quivira High School podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the official title? Is that what we call it?
Something like that. Yeah. I don't know, nothing that has official titles. You should know better. It's whatever it is a given week.
It's organic. It's always changing, always evolving.
Correct. You were listening to Adam Reck, and this is Luke. Well, wait, you're listening to Luke with Adam Reck.
Yes.
Host Adam Reck.
The guys. This is all guys podcast. We kicked Molly out.
She got a little bit too crazy with her views. And she hoarded the mic a lot.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know Molly. Loves to hear herself talk.
It's true. Probably listening to this right now. She was actually doing a road trip from Florida to Texas.
Whoa.
Taking pictures at each stop with her retreat T-shirt on. She always kept texting me how much she missed you guys and various instructions for me to do during the week while she was gone. So she's still working hard even when she's not here.
Yep.
Getting me going. So it's good.
Awesome. So the question is, with the guys being a guys podcast, do we talk the NCAA tournament or do we?
We totally can. A couple of the guys, if you were there with us, the first Dubs on Sunday went out to Buffalo Wild Wings, watched the KU game.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty good. But we caught the tail in there of Wichita State, almost upsetting Kentucky. Yeah. That would have been awesome. But later on, my bracket's still ruined with Villanova and Duke. South Carolina.
The Frank Martin Magic.
I saw that the church bracket where that's at right now. Did you fill it out? Did you do it?
I filled one out. I think I'm in 70th place.
Didn't see you on there.
Yeah.
Saw Corey.
You have to go down. You have to scroll all the way down.
Yeah.
To see me.
Mine's. I know Jamie's doing better than me.
Uh-oh.
And she picked by uniform colors. So
you gotta have a system.
If that says anything. She had Iowa State.
Nope.
Because she's from Iowa.
Yeah.
That didn't work out.
That didn't work out too well.
Never picked a Big 12 or former Big 12. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, I've got UCLA going all the way. So
UCLA.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be their 20th time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a bad choice. I haven't really followed too much basketball this year, to be honest. I haven't had cable or any way to watch it. So I just kind of went with what I've felt was good in the past 8 years.
Yeah.
Pay attention.
Yeah. Well, if you have any, if anybody out there has any surefire ways to fill out a bracket, you can let Luke and I know.
Yes.
So we can get that advice. But on to our topic for this week. Luke spoke on mental health. Mm-hmm. And because Luke was teaching, and Luke is also our AV guy, he could not talk and run the AV at the same time. So the AV had issues. And so Luke, being dedicated to the getting that out there for, you guys are on spring break, and so some of you guys probably missed it, but yep. Luke was dedicated, and he re-recorded it for you.
Live streamed it.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Get those algorithms.
There you go.
Yep.
So live stream. So check out that live stream. And so for were there a lot of people on? Was it light?
It was
light
actually
day,
it was medium.
Medium.
Yeah,
okay.
Actually more people showed up than I thought.
Yeah.
I think more this Sunday than last Sunday was singleness. Yeah, everybody was just up and left.
They didn't want to learn about singleness.
No, but we had a good core yesterday. So
yeah.
And a few new faces. There's always good new faces too. So
that's great. Well, some of those people had some questions.
They did
for you, and so
good ones too.
Yeah. So let's start off with this person asks. It says, wasn't Charles Spurgeon depressed? I know that can go along with many theologians. Martin Luther. Were they depressed? And then kind of how do you see? I don't know if you know anything about how they help to deal with their mental illness and kind of what things they were able to do to help themselves through that, or rely on God to help them through that. And
yeah, it's interesting, that question, because Charles Spurgeon, whoever wrote that question, has some good understanding of theologians, and I'm sure does some reading, and that's very, very good to see when you get asked by high schoolers about Charles Spurgeon. That's always good. For for those of you that are ever interested anymore, the biggest Spurgeon library is right here in our hometown at Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. Right. So you can go and read all of his original writings. Awesome preacher. Love Spurgeon. But yes, that is a great question, and I do believe the answer is yes, that he was depressed. You can see that in, I believe he said that himself, but also you can see it in his writing, similar to Luther, with a lot of those reformer types, or those types that kind of were a bit more brash. I think they had this, and I was speaking to one of you yesterday. I said that this hard ability to not, could never get comfortable. We're never quite, always just pushing and a little bit, I think, frustrated, which can probably be a residual of depression and being anxious and having anxiety or overthinking, or because they're all kind of related with even OCD. Being OCD, we see that you can tell that's in a lot of, even Calvin appeared to be relatively OCD. They were just very particular about certain things. And I think that is, you see that in artists, and you also see it in literature, like Shakespeare, Edgar Allan Poe, a person who suffered deeply with depression, but Beethoven was said to have depression as well. So just a lot of musicians have depression. If you actually, it's probably some of your favorite writers, James Taylor, for instance. People love James, old JT, which I imagine isn't still today.
That's not quite the same.
But if you're familiar with him at all, or do any research on James Taylor and Bob Dylan, or these old classic writers, they have admittedly had struggles with either grief or depression, and I think it kind of just gives them that edge. And that's important for us to realize that they can be very difficult and they are mental handicaps in a lot of ways, but the same way Jesus said in John 9 about, this man was born blind, not because of a sin or his parents' sin, but because the work of God could be shown through him. I think the same needs to be said about all these things, is that when your way your mind works in some ways, it also makes you unique. It's kind of weird saying. I know that I'm a particular kind of driven issue, and a driven person, and I could probably say that has to do with some elements of my depression or anxiety. Just a little bit of worry can work against you, and the devil can definitely work it against you. But with allowing just for grace for others, and just allowing to listen to others, and not being too brash or too forward, it can be actually beneficial to us in getting things done. So you can actually kind of curb it to your use. So it's a great question. I mean, I would like to even look up more about that. I've heard that before about Spurgeon, and definitely you said Luther, and I know that's true. And they I know that Luther dealt with it in probably not the most healthy of ways. Probably drinking, and he was known to drink a lot. But whether or not it was because of his depression, I don't know. But some people do use alcohol or drugs to cover depression, or to get that sense of dopamine rush. I know I like to exercise. Exercise gives me a rush of adrenaline that makes me feel a little bit more steady. And then people, even with diet is important. Stuff that makes you tired does not help. So I'd be curious to look at that more, but great question. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or
I don't much. I don't have much to add. The Luther thing. I clearly remember in college, kind of having a very shallow view of just joy in the Lord, and just that kind of as long as you are, once you're saved and you know that God's got it in control, then you should always be happy. And I had a friend that challenged me and talked about Luther was depressed and said, it doesn't really fit with that. And so had to really caught me aback and said, okay, this is a founder of the faith, and he dealt with depression and whatnot. And so definitely can see that you can deal with depression and mental illness and still be a faithful follower of God.
And I even know that, C.S. Lewis had that quote, who said, I didn't get into Christianity to feel good. I always knew that a bottle of port could do that. That's what he said. If in fact it's the opposite. If you want to be challenged and have a hardship, become a Christian. Or so, that was kind of a paraphrase of what he said, but it's the idea that, yeah, I mean, it's totally, in fact, he might struggle more, have more doubts, or become more depressed at times because of things, not necessarily lack of joy, but just because our enemy fights against us through our friends and family. And obviously it differs from person to person, but so there are times where we're going to struggle and not understand everything, but it can also be beneficial to us. Definitely.
All right, moving on to the next question. This person asks, for those with severe mental disabilities who can't think, quote unquote, correctly, what is their path to salvation and how do they believe in Christ?
Very good question. And I kind of readdressed this in the second video, more so than I did.
So watch the second video.
So watch, well, I guess it'd be the only video for you guys. But I want to start with the foundation of understanding the nature of God as being perfectly good. He's a good Father who is perfectly just and who loves with an everlasting, unconditional love. So when we look at someone with an obvious physical handicap, some of the severe level where their thinking might be just skewed or causes them to do odd things or stuff that we don't necessarily understand, or they have they're just not aware enough to understand the scriptures, and it just seems to be like it could be even irritating to us. Some natural feeling of it's hard. It's like, and we see this even with working with children too. But someone who is under heavy physical strain, mental strain, it's important for us to first give them the benefit of the doubt and love them and have grace for them, but then also be kind to them. The number one thing I think we can do is be kind. Like I said in the video, I had a friend who was an atheist, and he had a dream that he was in hell and Christ rescued him. He never read the Bible before. I said, how'd you know it was Christ? He said, because he was kind. And so I think that when we think of people with these large handicaps, something they will always be able to pick up on is your kindness. They may not understand everything or understand all the ins and outs of what it means to be Christian or whatever, but they can and will be changed by kindness and grace. That is something that all human beings, which they are fully human and fully loved by God, can fully understand, is grace and kindness. And that's the first thing I think we should do. And then when it comes to depression, anxiety with our friends, it can almost sometimes seem like it's a attention thing, or especially at this age when there's so much emotion and feels like someone's reaching out, or give them the benefit of the doubt that something deeper might be going on in their mind by being kind and by being gracious and by being loving to them, and not necessarily trying to fight them or get into arguments about what they're thinking, but necessarily first and foremost just being able to listen and being kind. But definitely more to the question about severe disabilities. Like I said, kindness. They really can see it and trust that the Lord will work through them the more that you work with them.
Cool. That's a good segue kind of this last question that we have, and it says, how do you start a conversation about mental health with someone? I think that, the just having that attitude of kindness as we come into a conversation, whether it's, trying to point out that somebody might have these kind of incorrect thinking patterns that go on. It seems like they're oftentimes where, even it seems like the older I get, the more I'm like, I think back to the way I thought, when I was younger, or maybe even like last week. And it's like, oh, I thought the world worked this way, or I thought this was the best way to handle the situation. But now that I'm older and wiser, it's like, it's probably not best to do it this way. And so opening up those conversations with somebody that you're trying to point out, like, hey, this might be a mental health issue of you. Kind of when somebody brings this up, you always tend to jump this way, become a victim, or something wrong happens, which could be minor in most people's life. Like, it always kind of seems like it's a major thing for you.
Right.
Maybe you should start seeking help. The question is, how do you do that without setting that person off, without making them feel like you're condemning them or saying they're less than perfect. What advice do you have for that?
Yeah, that's really good. I actually had a very close friend who was this way, and I think that that's a lot of what we deal with, especially as students, is not necessarily the obvious physical handicaps. Someone with extreme diseases can actually be easier to handle because it's easier to be kind, and they're not necessarily dealing with this, like you said, self-victimization or just these more subtleties that it's hard to go, wow, that person is handicapped. They more times than not, we really actually go, oh, well, this is something about who they are as personality or whatever. I did have a friend who was very, very close that way, older than me, probably about 10 years older than me, who went through his entire life just with that mentality. Was very, a lot of us believed had depression, extreme chronic depression, or bipolar disorder, which is also very difficult to work with someone who's bipolar. And bipolar people know that, and it's very common because they're one person 1 second and another person the next, and they also victimization is a large piece of it. So even with my friend, you would try to talk to that person, not knowing that they were mentally ill at this point, and try to confront them on something or something they said they were going to do. And it comes off almost as lying at times, or just not, you're not saying who you really are. And once you see this pattern continue, people then come after, you've gone through being kind and gracious, and you say, okay, why do you continue to act this way? Why do you continue to undermine your friends, this and that? And yeah, it usually goes to victimization or a big blow up. And there's, if it's a male, there's usually anger. If it's a woman, there's usually sadness, or it could be both, but usually you'll get either just victimization and sadness. With men, will get angry and blow up. And with my friend, who was a guy, that would happen time and time again. And it's hard to watch because it got to a point where he had to just realize that he couldn't keep a job. He couldn't, keep a relationship. I stayed his friend. A couple of my other friends stayed his friend. Couldn't keep a relationship. Couldn't keep a job. Couldn't, had a marriage fall through because it's very hard to deal with that in interpersonal relationships as well. Eventually, kind of got to the end of himself where he realized that he got the sensation from God that if he continued to run and continued to deny the fact that he needed medical attention, that the Lord would lift his hand of protection on him. Got that strongly from the Lord. And it's hard. It comes to time where I think it's just prayer after prayer, because there are some people that are just really, really difficult. There's not really any logical way you can talk to them unless they really realize within themselves that they need to seek help, just like an alcoholic. That's where it gets to with some people and their disabilities, that they have to go, okay, yeah, this is destroying my life, and I obviously have something wrong with me. I need to get medical attention. I need to get medicated or seek therapy or something. And that happens a lot with people who are chronically depressed. So if you're in that situation and you're having that with one of your friends where it just seems like time and time again, you got to get down on your knees and pray for that person. You got to cry out for that person and fast for that person, because it's gonna come between them and the Lord at some point. Always be gracious. Always be kind. You have to set up boundaries with certain things when it comes to leadership, and you can't have people that are gonna not follow through on things or be aggressive. And that goes for you as well. But pray for that person, because eventually the Lord will speak to them and say, if they're listening at all. But even not, to realize that, okay, enough is enough, and they've lost too many jobs and too many relationships. It's difficult. It's hard to watch, but it doesn't have to be that way. But on the extreme cases, on the more minor cases where your friends, it's just like I said, I do believe that just being loyal is really important. So just being there and continuing to be direct and talk very direct. So I think the biggest things with depression, anxiety, and those who have interpersonal relationships is that a lot of times we just kind of get sick of that person and we just leave, and there's not really much said about it. They assume things about you. You assume things about them. And I think the best for depressed people or anxious people or bipolar people, the best thing you can do is actually be very, very clear. speak very, very, when you see them, mean exactly what you say and say exactly what you mean, and be bounded from the beginning. But depression, anxiety, much easier to deal with on those levels at times. Bipolar disorder becomes more difficult, and that's when you see things that are similar to, like I said, the same route you go with an alcoholic. They have to get medicated. They have to seek help, or it can be devastating. So,
all right.
Awesome.
Yeah, so those are our questions for this week. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for Luke for speaking and coming back and answering these questions for us, speaking twice.
Yeah.
And then
we had Corey do that once too. It's the second time. But it always works out.
Yeah.
That's good.
And if you did not like the tournament talk, then we apologize.
Sorry, just gotta get Molly back.
Yep.
All right. Well, have a good one, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
All right.